Hello everyone, I'm Dan the Man. Well, another season is in the books and another champion is crowned. And Nicole makes Big Brother history as she becomes the first woman to beat a man in the final two. Not to mention one of only 6 female winners in 18 seasons. I didn't cover the week before finale night, so here are my quick thoughts on Victor and Corey's eviction. First off, the big one. Victor. Although Corey put up Victor and the editing made it seem like it was more his idea than it actually was, make no mistake, Nicole was the one behind them stabbing Paul and Victor in the back. Fans were calling her a backstabber and a snake for her horrible betrayal of Paul and Victor. Never mind, Paul and Victor were seriously discussing doing the same thing to Corey and Nicole had Paul one head of household. Apparently them not doing something they didn't get the chance to do counts as them being too loyal to betray them. Honestly, I think they made the right decision for all the reasons I mentioned in the last video. Fans were furious and branded Nicole as a bad person for doing it, but the truth of the matter is that turning on an ally is nothing people don't do all the time in Big Brother. The fans just didn't want to admit it, maybe even to themselves, but the real reason they were mad is that they loved Victor and did not like Nicole. Most fans have been fantasizing about a Victor and Paul final two, with Victor winning the game, but Nicole and Corey won the pivotal head of household and ruined everything. But rather than just admit that, they tried to rationalize that voting out a comp beast who would not take either of them to the final two was somehow bad gameplay, or that turning on someone was a sign of a horrible person in a game full of backstabbing and betrayal. Had Paul won and put up Nicole and Corey, which is what he was considering doing no matter how many people want to say he was loyal as fuck, then I have little doubt those same people would be saying it was a game and Paul did what he had to do. Victor was a candidate to win. Probably the best candidate to win, if what we saw in the jury house was any indication, so Nicole and Corey took him out while they could, before they lost probably their last chance to do so. Was it ruthless? Maybe, but it was a game. Nicole was not there to help Victor win, just so fans could get their happy ending of the underdog defying the odds. Was he the right choice over Paul? Definitely. He was better at comps and more liked by the jury. He also took getting put up on the block more personally, and while he got over it by the end, any chance of him taking Corey and Nicole to the end seemed to go out the window when he got so upset by what they did. Now on to Corey, which was an easy one. A lot of fans were mad Paul didn't put up James because they felt he didn't do anything and didn't deserve it. Although it should be noted fans put too much emphasis on huge game moves that shake the house to its core in comp wins. Will didn't do any of those things and is considered to be one of the greatest players in Big Brother history, even 15 years later. If he played today, people would argue he didn't deserve it because he didn't do anything. But either way, that's how James was perceived, so a lot wanted Paul to deny him a chance at big money since they felt he didn't do anything to earn it. But while I don't think James was ever going to take Paul to the final two, he was obviously more likely than Nicole and Corey taking him if they were still together in the final three. So even if he didn't trust or seem to particularly like James, he was not the good strategy to take out. Ultimately, whether Corey or Nicole went home was James' decision, however. Was she the right choice? Probably. Nicole and James were friends going into the house, so while both likely would not have taken James to the final two over Paul, she was still the more loyal of the two. Although James and Nicole, as I have said before, have clearly had each other backs this entire game. So I figured he was always going to take Nicole over Corey, even if it hadn't been the best move for his game. Yes, James did ask Paul who to take and said it was up to Paul, but that was in my opinion James being too big of a wimp to take the hit for his actions right until the very end. I think he said that knowing Paul wanted Corey out, so yeah, he would do whatever Paul told him to do, as long as whatever Paul told him to do was to vote out Corey. If Paul had changed his mind, I think James still would have voted out Corey anyway. So with that out of the way, on to the final three. The final three-part head of household competition was typical of most recent years. An endurance comp for part 1, a grueling comp that has both mental and physical elements to it in part 2, and A or B choices on what the jury said to answer the questions in part 3. I was surprised Paul won the endurance comp. I don't think production tried to rig it or anything, since it's always an endurance comp, but I think they were counting on Nicole or James to win it. But I'll give Paul credit. He came through and beat two people who were in their element at the competition they do best on. James cried about losing, but insisted to Paul that he threw it to him. Based on the DR and his complaining about losing in private, clearly he didn't throw it. But I wanted to take a minute to say how over it I was this season of James blaming every comp he lost, which was almost all of them, on throwing it. Again, I'd like to think that if it had been me and James actually tried to say he threw it, I would have said, no you didn't, and if you don't stop insulting my intelligence right now, I'm not taking you to final two. For a guy who prided himself on his ballsy playing and broke his arm last season patting himself on the back for it, James was a giant wuss all season. I get it backfired when he tried to show off last time, but he went way too far in the other direction this year, and is blaming every loss on throwing it when he clearly didn't, just reek of insecurity and was beyond pathetic. Nicole won the second part of the challenge, but James can't win anything but endurance comps for being small as an advantage, and he couldn't even consistently win those this year, so I never for a second thought Nicole wouldn't beat him, so that was no surprise. A lot of fans insisted James was holding back and the lion would be unleashed. Guess he planned to unleash it after the game was over. And I'll give Paul props again for winning the final showdown with him and Nicole, but the big thing, possibly the game-losing move, he took Nicole, and then the jury voted for Nicole to win. Oops. To be fair, we don't know for a fact he could have beat James either. I thought James had a chance of winning against Paul since he had so many friends at the jury. But Devon has said in interviews she was never going to vote for James, and I thought she would have been one of his votes, so I may very well have been wrong about that. But the flawed logic was why Paul took Nicole. I don't buy the whole reason he gave James, although it seems to get him James' votes, so can't really fault him for saying that. But I think he was always going to take Nicole. I think his ego was convinced he should take her because she deserved it over James, and because he really didn't like James. But if Paul took Nicole out of some need to deny James the money he felt James didn't earn, then he got what he deserved. Not hating on Paul for it, but if you want to win, you take the person you think you can beat the best. So James got second place. So what? If he felt James not getting $50,000 was worth Paul potentially losing $450,000, then I guess Paul got his wish. So should the jury have voted for Nicole? I don't have an answer to that one. There's no should or shouldn't when it comes to the jury. A lot of fans think who scored the most strategy points or who won the most comps or who survived being on the block the most is some barometer of how the jury should vote. But that's not how it works. The goal is to make it to the end and maneuver it with the jury who will vote for you over who you sit next to. The vote's subject to why the jury wants someone to win. They're not Olympic gymnastic judges who score on technique, so I can't say the jury made the wrong decision because there was no wrong decision. The real controversy is, was it personal? To that I say, yes, it's always personal. Always. Paul was loved by fans and got a good at it, but he was a loudmouth asshole to people, and also, it was a mostly female jury, and guys who call women cunts without any remorse for doing so usually don't get a lot of brownie points from women. I honestly think his treatment of women more than anything hurt him. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a lot of why Devon voted for Nicole, despite the reasons she gave being to the contrary. She argued gameplay, and it may have been, but I don't buy the girl who in the jury threw a hissy fit in an argument she was not initially part of and had to be restrained doesn't do things emotionally. If people don't like you, they're not going to hand you life-changing money no matter how slick you are or how many things you win. People are human, and they don't turn off emotion to become robots who tally strategy points at the very end. Sure, some will do that to prove they're not a bitter jury and gain fan approval, but most of us are not like that. Fans think because Dr. Will, Dan, Dick, or Rachel won, when none of them were exactly the most popular person in the House, that it's proof the jury doesn't vote personally. But everyone forgets all of those people went up against people who the House disliked more than them. Big Brother is won and lost by your social game, not by your comp wins or your game-changing moves. Fans like people who do a lot of those things because they make good TV, and production likes it for the same reason, and thus tells the narrative that that's the behavior to emulate because it's great gameplay. But it's not the thing that ultimately wins in most cases. Even the ones like Derek or Hayden, who beat people well-liked in the House for those things, were also liked themselves. If you want to be loved by fans, get more Twitter followers, and get asked back, to become a shitstir and cause drama and chaos. But if you want to actually win, dial it back a notch, or make damn sure you drag someone less liked than you to the end if you decide to play that way. That's how you win Big Brother. If you want to win on some point system, go play football. So in closing, congratulations to Nicole. She may not be the best Big Brother player, but she played a good game and did what it took to win for this particular season. And congratulations to Paul, who I don't like because he's an attention-seeking loudmouth, sorry Paul fans, but he came in not knowing almost anything about Big Brother and proved to have a knack for it and almost pulled off the win. He picked the wrong person to take the final two, but hindsight's 20/20. At least when it comes to his game, he has nothing to be ashamed of. Well, that's my thoughts on this season of Big Brother. It was one of the better seasons in recent years, and a fun cast, even if most of them knew little to anything about Big Brother. In some ways, I think that made it better, since most didn't try to emulate others or just do what worked in the past. The new season of Big Brother Over the Top starts soon on CBS All Access. I'll give my first thoughts after the premiere, but not sure I'll do weekly updates yet. They seem to be changing a lot of things, including giving the audience a whole lot of power, which might make for a good show, but if the audience controls most of the game, I'm not sure I'll have much to analyze. They also seem to rely on their fans spending a lot of time on the feeds, and while I follow the feeds, this is not a good time of year to me to spend all day watching them. So if that's what I need to do, I won't be able to give adequate analysis. So mostly it's up in the air. I've not liked what I've heard about the new show so far, but a fall Big Brother is still something I'm looking forward to, so we'll see. Who knows, this might be the start of a new era of Big Brother. And if not, we always have the summer with Big Brother 19. Thanks for watching. I'm Dan the Man, and I'll see you next time.
We'll be right back.